Here's the preview of the 3 seed Gonzaga versus the 4 seed UCONN. UConn's playing a lot better now than they have been. I mean, they're healthy. And yes, they barely lost to Marquette in the semifinal game, so really we're close in the Big East tournament. And of course, Gonzaga won the West Coast Conference, got a share of it in the regular season, while winning the whole tournament as well. So, what's some players to keep an eye on for both teams? And I'm going to look real fast if there's any injuries for both of these teams. Nothing for Gonzaga. And for UConn, aka Connecticut. And nothing for them too. So that's good news. We're going to play, there's 2 teams with full strength. And I kind of debated if I wanted to do this game or the Kansas State versus Florida Atlantic game, but I decided to just do both of them because, 1, this is an intriguing matchup right here, and 2, the other one needs some respect too. I mean, it's a feels good story. And this game between Gonzaga and UConn, by the way, Saturday, 7:49 p.m. Central Time on TBS. So, what are some players that keep an eye on for Gonzaga? First of all, in terms of the best player is obviously Drew Timme. It is him. I mean, 25.5 points per game, 3.2 assists per game, 7.5 rebounds per game. He's a forward, as we all know. 0.6 steals per game, 1 block per game, 2.6 turnovers per game, 2.2 fouls per game. He is 4 for 24 on threes, 16.7%, but don't expect him to shoot threes. But if there's a bugaboo about him, it's his free throw shooting. I mean, 63.4% from the free throw line on 243 attempts. So, and 1 block per game. Okay, the next player is Julian Strawther. He's a guard. 15.4 points per game, 6.3 rebounds per game, 0.9 steals per game, 2.1 fouls per game, 1.5 turnovers per game, 42.1% from the free throw line, threes, and 77.1% from the free throw line. So that takes care of that. Anton Watson, he's a forward. 11.3 points per game, 6.2 rebounds per game, 2.4 assists per game, 1.2 turnovers per game, 1.8 steals per game, 0.7 blocks per game, 2.9 fouls per game. So that is a concern, is his fouling. 34% from the 3-point line, but that's on 47 attempts and 111 attempts on free throws. He's only made 56.8% of those, which is 63. So that's kind of a bugaboo, as you could tell. Rasir Bolton, he's a guard. Coming up, 10.2 points per game, 2.6 assists per game, 0.8 steals per game, 1.8 fouls per game, 1.1 turnovers per game, 38.9% from the 3-point line, 78.8% from the free throw line. So, yeah. Malachi Smith, he's a guard too. 8.7 points per game, 3.7 rebounds per game. 53.7%, actually 49.4% from the 3-point line on 89 attempts, 79.5% from the free throw line on 44 attempts, 0.9 steals per game, 1.8 turnovers per game, 1.1 fouls per game. So, Nolan Hickman is a guard, 7.9 points per game, 2.5 rebounds per game, 3.1 assists per game, 36.5% on the 3-point line, 81.3% from the free throw line on 32 attempts, 1.3 turnovers per game, 1 steal per game, 1.7 fouls per game. Ben Gregg is the next player to keep an eye on, and there's only one other guy you have to really keep an eye on for Gonzaga after this, because everybody else doesn't play a lot of minutes. 2.9 rebounds per game, 0.6 turns per game, 0.7 blocks per game, 1.8 fouls per game, but he is 39% from 3 on 59 attempts, so he can shoot. 76.9% from the free throw line on 39 attempts. So Hunter Salas is the next player to keep an eye on. He's a guard. 4.4 points per game, 2.2 rebounds per game, 0.7 turns per game, 0.6 steals per game, 2 fouls per game. 26.8% from the three-point line on 41 attempts, and 79.85% from the free throw line on 39 attempts. So that's definitely some players to keep an eye on for them. Now for UCONN, they've been a juggernaut. Yes, they only defeated the 5 seed St. Mary's the prior game before Arkansas by 15 points, but they defeated Iona by 24. Granted, I know that's a 13 seed, but they defeated Arkansas by 23 points, 88-65 last game. And they're playing a lot better, and they're healthier. So the first player is to keep an eye on is Adam Senego. He's a forward, 17.3 points per game, 7.5 rebounds per game, 35.4% from the free throw line on 48 attempts, 76.8% from the free throw line on 112 attempts, 0.8 blocks per game, 0.8 steals per game, 2.8 fouls per game, 2 turnovers per game. So Jordan Hawkins, he's a guard. 16.1 points per game, 3.7 rebounds per game, 37.7% from the three-point line on 260 attempts at that. That's pretty good. 89.1% from the free throw line, 0.7 steals per game, 1.4 turnovers per game, 2.3 fouls per game. So now Tristan Newton, he's not a double-digit scorer, but he's pretty close. I mean, 9.9 points per game, 4.3 rebounds per game, 4.7 assists per game, 2.3 turnovers per game, 1.1 steals per game, 2.1 fouls per game, 37.7% from the three-point line, 81% on the free throw line at guard. So Alex Caravan is the next player to keep an eye on. 9.4 points per game, 4.4 rebounds per game, 40.9% from the three-point line on 149 attempts, 83.7% from the free throw line on 43 attempts, 0.6 blocks per game, 0.6 steals per game, 1.1 turns per game, 2.4 fouls per game, and that he's a forward. So Donovan Klingan, he's a center at 7'2", 7.1 fouls per game, points per game, 5.8 rebounds per game, 1.1 turns per game, 1.9 fouls per game, 1.8 blocks per game, 0 for 1 on threes. But he is a hack-a-shack at the free throw line. 52.3% on 86 attempts. So if he is a hack-a-shack, this is the guy to do it. Andre Jackson Jr., 6.8 points per game, 6.3 rebounds per game, 4.5 assists per game. He's a guard. 2 turnovers per game, 1.1 steals per game. 29.1% from the three-point line on 86 attempts, 65.2% on the free throw line on 46 attempts. So, yeah, that's most of the stats you need to know. Joey Kakatera is the next player I'm going to mention. He's a guard, 5.7 points per game, 44.1% from the 44.1% from the three-point line, 88.5% from the free throw line. 1 foul per game, 0.8 turnovers per game. So that's all the stats you need to know. Naheem Aline, Alleyyne. I apologize if I butchered that last name. 5 points per game, 1.4 fouls per game, 0.6 turnovers per game, 32.6% from the three-point line on 95 attempts, 24 for 28 on free throws, which is 85.7%. And the last player I'm going to mention is Hassan Daria, Diarra. I apologize if I butchered that last name. He's a guard, 2.3 points per game, 1.1 turnovers per game, 1.3 fouls per game, 0.8 blocks per game, 51.4% from the free throw line on 37 attempts, and Sim for 37 on threes, which is 18.9%. So obviously, both these teams kind of match up with each other in terms of size. So, but I know the better competition is the Big East. No offense to the West Coast Conference, but of course that does matter. But it in terms of like being tested. But at this point in the year, when you're trying to get to a Final Four, it doesn't really matter which conference you come from, because you made it this far. So you got to take care of, first of all, limit the foul trouble. You don't want to, especially want to foul in a jump shot. I mean, that's the worst thing you could do. Of course, you got to get to the free throw line while limiting those free throw line attempts, and you got to make them count. And that means for you, Gonzaga, yeah, you kind of let UCLA around. I mean, you didn't shoot good on free throws last game, 52.4%. Of course, I'm not saying UConn has better free throw shooters than you, but I mean, they only have like. I'm just saying that because of the last game for Gonzaga, and of course, UConn needs to do the same thing, make their free throws count. You gotta get some points in the paint, points in transition, fast break, turnovers, bench points. While you also want to limit those, you gotta rebound the ball, especially on the defensive end, and of course, second chance points. You gotta get those, and while limiting that at the same time. So you gotta make adjustments on the fly, on offense and defense. Shot selection is key, and you gotta make the other team uncomfortable for shooting the ball. I mean, and UConn last game, by the way, they shot 81% on free throws on 21 attempts. So, yeah, that's definitely in their favor, and they're more well rested. I would say, because they played a blowout game compared to Gonzaga. I mean, if I'm being completely honest, but to wait and see what really happens here. This is really a good matchup. And currently, UConn is favored by 2 points as of right now. So, but, you know, at this point, who's favored or not doesn't really matter. You got to go out there and play the game. Of course, both these teams have nothing to lose because you made it this far. You made it further than a lot of teams in the NCAA tournament. Of course, you want to get to the Final Four in Houston. So, we'll have to wait and see what happens in this game. And I expect this game to be really, really close. And it would stun me if it's a blowout. It would, because it's a 3-4 matchup. Anyways, if you like this content, hit like and subscribe, and see you guys later. 5 subscribers, we're on the road to it. Let's go.